All right, we have an amazing guest. Amy, why don't you introduce him?
So our guest today is Ryan Doris, and for a long time, I did not know who this person I followed on Instagram was because I knew him only as the Natty Pro.
Yeah.
So I didn't know who he was till I met him at the Physique Summit this summer. But his name is Ryan Doris. He's a natural bodybuilder, owns a coaching company called Fortis EQ. He is very much known for his goals, and he has a marketing degree, MBA, MIM. He's a pretty smart guy.
Right. He has multiple degrees. He's a philosopher. He quotes Nietzsche. And I don't even know if I pronounced his name correctly. So anybody who quotes philosophers without reading it out of a book has to be pretty smart.
He does.
This is Ryan.
Welcome, Ryan.
I am so glad to be here. I feel I've had one of those days where you haven't said a word to anyone, just like cleaning my house and being quiet, and then I'm getting all this positive reinforcement at once. It feels pretty good, so I'm glad to be here and get praise from you guys. So thank you. I'm really glad. I'm excited about today's conversation.
Well, we are too.
So one of the things that we wanted to have you on for, Ryan, is, a lot of people do know you, but people that don't, this is primarily a podcast about plastic surgery and beauty and health. But in reality, some of the things you talk about with your business really do relate to what we do, and for anyone who in their life is trying to make their life better. Okay. So we talk about in this podcast empowerment, education, and transformation. And that's what you kind of create a blueprint for people to do that in their lives, to have a life of meaning, to get rid of the chaos, and to make whatever they want out of their lives, to make either it's a transformation or just to have a better life. And Amy and I have both been drawn to your approach to coaching and your approach to helping people with the stuff that's between their ears. Amy always talks about abs are made in the kitchen. 80% of abs are made in the kitchen and 20% are made in the gym. Well, 100% of your life is made between your ears, right? And if you can't get that right, then all this other stuff doesn't really matter. So that's what we want to talk to you about today.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the framework of most successful people that I've met is about the same. There seems to be sort of one model for, at least in democratic societies in the Western world. There seems to be one model of a certain way of thinking and a certain way of looking out for things. Whether you're a surgeon or a pilot or a nutrition, it doesn't matter. It seems to be one type of thinking that I found over and over that really seems to have these foundational formulas for success. So yeah, I would say I'm lucky that I've gotten to talk to a lot of fellow successful people like you today, and just have gotten to read from the greats and books and philosophy. So I'm here to reiterate whatever I've read that's great, and whatever I feel that I've had the very few original thoughts I've probably had in my life. I'm excited to talk about those as well. So.
Yeah, and I think that's really key too, and so much of what you talked about at the Physique Summit this summer was self-actualization, but kind of taking a step back from there. What brought you to this? I kind of know some of this backstory, but I'd love for you to kind of talk about what brought you to that point.
Of doing the Physique Summit superficially, or
no, of kind of becoming your own self-CEO, and your thoughts behind how you get to self-actualize all the pyramids.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is luck. I just was a middle child, right? So I had an opportunity, having an older brother and a younger brother, I think, growing up, always kind of to ride my own wave, right? So I just conventionally, the things that I saw my brothers doing, there's nothing wrong with my brothers. I just was always kind of the black sheep outcast. And again, it's mostly luck. I wasn't a bad kid. I just was interested and selfishly how to get better and how to grow. And then no matter what I would see, you'd read Buddhism. So I first got into Buddhism when I was younger, 19, and then you would even see books like business books, right? Like Jim Collins, Good to Great, and I kept seeing these same principles over and over and over. And then I think for me the biggest thing was how do you apply this? And I think the biggest way to apply a lot of these things is becoming objective. And one thing that I found that I was really good at being objective was, well, through what I knew, through my avenue, through my education, which was, having an MBA, just through management, learning how to manage things, and that's what my job was. And the one way that I can be objective with myself and with my emotions is by knowing these philosophies, but a way to kind of act on them is to have some type of objective, I don't want to say practical application of them. So that's where the whole idea of CEO of myself came up. It's because like I have the knowledge, I have the base, but I'm an complete idiot when it comes to applying it. So I need a system to not just talk the talk. I think people need to find some way between their, I don't know what the word would be. Maybe their worldly, like Freud, right? Their ego, superego, right? Their worldly self and their regular self. So I think that was it for me. How do I become this honest dialogue to myself? These words that I'm saying, how do I live them? So the best way I knew how to do it was to say, I'm hiring myself as my own CEO. I'm firing my ego. He's got to take a back seat.
I think that's really key too. I mean, it's not so much just deciding to make a change, but it's also kind of what you have to give up. And if that's living by ego or lifting with ego, sometimes that's the thing that people struggle with that's really holding them back.
And I think
feels good.
Yeah, I think that the chaos that we call human life, and that's the problem. And the one thing that really drew me to Ryan with him talking about, kind of the way he approaches things was he approaches it with pragmatism and on a real basic level, even though it's complicated on a real basic level, and just laying it out. And that's where we see people struggle in our practice and in life, and everyone comes in because everyone's kind of struggling with different things, but they're all similar things. They're struggling with themselves. And their biggest hurdle to overcome in life is themselves. And Ryan kind of lays that out in a way that's very self-effacing, which I love, and saying that I'm an idiot, right? And I struggle. And how do I get through this? And then he used all of his intelligence and then all of his, his education and stuff, kind of came up with this idea. So to me personally, I thought it had a lot of relevance to everyone.
Yeah. And I love that thought of being your own CEO, because it's kind of like it makes you take a step back and analyze what the problem is, and figure out how you're going to fix yourself.
Right. And, I think, go ahead, Ryan.
And I think that's kind of that's a tough thing, right? So it's very easy to say, I'm pragmatic, but I think I struggle with it today. Every day I struggle with it. It never gets easy, like, to remain in that pragmatism, because I always want to jump out and take control. The chaos, I always want to jump out and take control. But I think that's really, for me, that's always been the question, is that how do people actually apply this? How do people actually live this? Because I think one of the first things I struggled with when I first came out with like creating content and kind of getting my name out there was that I knew the tools and I knew how to talk about what Carl Jung said. I can do that. I can repeat that a million times. But how do I deliver it in a way that it appeals to your rationale? Because I think personally, for me, just the way my brain is wired, my rationale is what I worship higher than anything. So if it makes sense to me, I say, all right, I'm running with this. Oftentimes you hear things like conventional wisdom, which is good, right? The 10 Commandments are great conventional wisdom, like don't kill people, but present it to me in a way, like that I understand. Put it in a language that I actually get, and I think that's part of the disconnect between the average person and these things that we know we should be doing and are better for us. And that to me is the whole. So that's my focus, is how to use these words and wisdom and then ideas that are intelligent, that have been around since the beginning of time nearly, but putting it in a, for lack of a better word, a bro language, right? I'm just a bro. Like, I just like to talk to me normally. That's always been my thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, every time I talk like a scientist, no one ever listens. And when I talk to people,
No.
when I talk to people in their normal language, that's the best way to communicate. You had a quote on one of your presentations. I used to think the brain was this was from, I forget who it was from. I used to think the brain was the most wonderful organ in my body. Then I realized who was telling me this. I thought that was like perfect.
It's true.
So, Ryan, in our daily life, and we have to relate it to what we do, people come in all the time and, they're struggling with weight, they're struggling with self-perception or the way they feel. And you see the humanity in the struggle and you feel for these people. They're good people, but there's always that layer of this is because of this. It's because of my thyroid, or it's because of that, or this and that, this genetics and that, all this kind of stuff. And some of that may be true, but that's just like human nature. And I think that if you want to, people are always searching for an answer and they never really look within. And we see that especially with self-perception, especially with, perception of beauty and how they feel every day. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny when our patients come in, they're like, you don't understand what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm a human being. Even though I'm a talented surgeon, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, what is going on with me? And we'll talk about this. There's certain things that get me out of that. Surgery does that. I am so blessed. And I think for you, reading does. I mean, and for Amy, definitely nutrition and probably reading also. But I think that's where I think I want to get into this a little bit more, if you don't mind, that you're a kind of CEO of Self ideas about what people can do. And I know this is kind of extrapolating from a very specific topic related to physique, but I do think it's applicable to all of life. And by the way, if you watch, I think your YouTube channel is at Natty Pro too, right?
Is it, Ryan? Is your YouTube?
Yeah. Yep, if you watch his YouTube videos, they're about him. They're about life. I mean, he talks about working out, but in reality, it's about just kind of getting through life.
Oh my gosh,
every day.
They're so good. Like even the one recently where you're talking about having your macros cut.
My coach hates me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's all such good things, like those things that we all think like inside our heads, but hearing them come out in a logical way.
So if you consider, so you're the CEO of the Self guy, right? You figured it all out. Okay. So why, the first question is, you talk about the driver and the mechanic. I want you to go into that. But why do we all get lost in the weeds? Why do we want to be like too much of a driver sometimes or too much of a mechanic? And for people to understand that, the driver would be the doer part and the mechanic would be the information part. So people want to improve their health, improve their nutrition, and then what they do is they go read everything about it, but then they don't do it. Or vice versa, they read just a little bit and they decided they want to go keto because they read an article in USA Today, and then they go on a keto diet for 3 months and really have no preparation. So what is it in people that they have a tendency to do that, and why is it so hard to balance those two?
Oh, it's a good question. So I'll tell you where this driver mechanic thing came to me. So you remember, it was maybe almost 10 years ago. Captain Sully landed in the Hudson River.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard. Yeah, and that's when the idea first came to me. Is that something went wrong with that airplane, that mechanical issue. But he was just busy piloting during the whole thing. He was very calmly saying, "No, I'm not gonna make it. Like we're gonna be in Hudson." And he was like, "No, we're gonna land in Hudson." And so he didn't waste time trying to relook at the blueprint, relook at maybe this winner, this vision, or he just focused purely on piloting. And when the time came to focus on the mechanism of what went wrong, he'll do that afterwards. He'll take care of that. But right now, come on, man. Like you can't waste time. You got to try. You got to fly the plane. And so I feel like that's one thing people don't get about life, is that it is live. Like you got to give it a 100% shot at piloting. I feel like people are stuck in this, I guess, kind of as Nietzsche would say, people are. Man is like he's between the animal and the Ubermensch. Like they're in the middle. They can't decide what they want to be. So with this driver versus mechanic thing, I take time. I journal. I write. I read. I do research like everyone else. If keto is the best tool for me, or how many hours I need to sleep, et cetera, and I give myself a patch of hours to say this is a mechanic time. Tomorrow I'm not going to say a word. I have to just be busy. 100% flying that airplane, 100% driving that race car. Like I cannot try to judge and execute at the same time, or else I'm just in a useless limbo of anxiety that just kind of goes on a feedback loop and it gets louder and louder and louder until I'm crippled. So from the seed of the stupid thing of Captain Sully landing in the water, he really inspired me how calm he was, and I was like, he pulled that off, and maybe I can try to tweak this with my own days, with my own life. So that's what I do. I give my life a fair shot. Even if I feel like it's not working, I rise that day out for 12 hours. Tomorrow I will do repairs. Today I'm driving to do, and I focus fully on.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've never really thought about it that way. Like, it's kind of the whole Yoda thing, like do or do not. Like, once you make up your mind that this is what you're going to do, like you got to get to doing it and just do it, and then make repairs at the end of the day.
You got to give it a fair shot. You got to give it a fair shot. That's what we don't do, is that we don't give something 100%, and then you can go back. If it's something where it's life or death, sure, judge and second guess yourself. But generally, people second guess themselves too early. If something's difficult, that's the whole point. Like when you see anybody, a surgeon gives orders or a military general gives orders, this is the orders, this is what we clearly need to do and stick to 100%. We will judge it at this hour. And that to me is the idea. Giving yourself on time to just go, and then giving yourself time to critique. But doing them simultaneously, at least for me, is a real trap. And I feel like people live in a persistent state of judging and trying to do at the same time that renders them to nowhere.
No, that's so true. That's
and you talk about being proactive versus responsive, and really what you're talking about is being proactive, and we'll get into that, like how you break down your day and how you keep track of things. And that's the thing where everybody struggles. I mean, you just look at macros. It's like macros is a foreign language, and they're like, how do you follow your macros? So I write my food down, and they're like, oh, that seems really difficult. I'm like, if you can't write what you eat down, how you going to journal, how you going to plan your day out, you know? That's the easiest one. And don't get me wrong, it was very hard for me, being not in the fitness world by any means, but trying to do that. And now, you set up some sort of foundation, some sort of web that you can work through. It really does help you.
Well, there's freedom in that. And I remember having that conversation with you when you were very first learning how to track macros. And I told you how freeing it was. Yep. I mean, like you literally, like I eat 3 ounces, like I'm gonna have 3 ounces of chicken, weigh it out, eat it. Like you don't obsess about food like the way I think people think that you might. Right. And I feel like it's the same way with other decisions in your life. If you just make that decision, this is what you're gonna do, and you just do it, you'll stop kind of obsessing about questioning it.
And that's what Ryan talks about, is like that inner voice, that chaotic voice, the emotional part, which you need those things too. But like if you talk about Captain Sully, or even in surgery, when the shit hits the fan, excuse my French, I mean, you have to go into that mode where it's like it's coming from a part of your brain that's different, that's rational, that's focused. And that is what people miss in life. They tend to float around chaotically. There's something in science called Brownian motion, which is where molecules just kind of float around and bounce off each other, and that's what I feel like people people do in their daily lives. And that's why it's so great to be proactive instead of responsive, and then to have some substrate or foundation to work through. So Ryan, when you were kind of working on this, you talked about Maslow's triangle. We're like going through all of like development and anything I got in medical school related to psychiatry and psychology. You've pretty much hit on everything, but you talked about Maslow's triangle. Can you go into that a little bit? We have a picture of it on our video of this. I'm gonna let you go through it, but just so you know, Maslow was he was like a psychologist in the 50s, anyways, he talked about needs, basic needs versus psychological needs and self-fulfillment needs, and from that standpoint, in terms of us as human beings, we all need basic needs. That would be safety, security, water, everything like that. But then you work your way up to psychological needs. So can you go into the fact about, like, you mentioned about third world versus third world countries, and then also the top need, or the highest point of the pyramid, which is self-actualization, which is what people struggle with the most. Right.
So I think the thing that's interesting about Maslow is that like most psychologists or anyone who does clinical work, they actually don't, or anybody in science, you find the opposite of what you set out to look for. So Maslow intended to really just write about human motivation, like whatever you wanted, like what motivates a human, and then he stumbled on these successors, which is the triangle, like you said, like the needs move up, right? So if you're a listener of this podcast, you come here for knowledge. If you have explosive diarrhea, you can't listen to this. There's an order to this. So if you really have to go to the toilet, you've instantly checked out of all these fancy words we're using here. You don't give a shit. Like, you just have to go to the bathroom. And then, once you go to the bathroom, you keep moving your way up in the triangle. My parents, my entire family, I should say, I'm a first generation American. They're South American. They're from Guyana, South America. It's a very small country, less than 1 million people, very poor. I've there. It's very fun when you go there, but boy, it's total chaos, right? It's just poor, but it's fun. So anyways, everyone in Guyana, they seem to be a little happier because self-actualization is not a thing in that country. In America, in most first Western world countries, the base needs can be taken care of. The psychological needs can be taken care of. If you're an average American, you probably never have had to worry about safety or food or belonging and esteem. You were just born into a family that had at least one parent, and you're all right. Even if you were born into the project, you have people in your community that are there. You got something, even at the worst. So we obsess in this Western life about self-actualization, which is where most Americans fall into depression, as Maslow's seen. So self-actualization is what Maslow called a psychologically healthy person self-actualizes. I think the issue why most people can't self-actualize, which is basically achieving your full potential outside of just the standard 9 to 5, whatever you want to do, is because you actually have to be proactive, as you mentioned earlier. And this is a great difficulty for most people to find. It takes a good amount of work. I think we are taught institutionally to do this, read the syllabus, do this work, and we're really good at doing what someone else tells us what to do. But the difficulty with self-actualization is that it is the first entrepreneurial venture for most people in their entire life. It is the one time in your life you may have to go off the grid, off the syllabus, off the program, right, and kind of find your own way. And I think most people are undertrained by the time they get to 25 at finding their own way because they've never had to do it. They've just got straight A's their whole life, which is why I said I was lucky earlier in being the black sheep, because I always was good at finding my own way. Just mostly luck.
That's the middle child in you.
The middle child in me, right?
Yes.
So I was just lucky.
Yep.
So that thing, that feeling that when you see a Tony Robbins or you see these Oprahs, these people who just look so full, it's because they have achieved self-actualization. And it is extremely difficult because not only can you achieve it, but in America, and what my talk was spoke about, was that I ran to achieve it, but I forsake all of the base needs in an effort to get it. So sure, maybe you want to go make that job and you get your 6 figures and your car and your this and your life and everything, but you've killed yourself to get it. You're out of shape, you've lost it, right? So now your self-actualization, your goal of self-actualization is actually not just a kind of a prison now. It's no longer self-actualization. So that things are done categorically in order, and they need to be them. So you can't just chase self-actualization saying I want a painter who eats, who feels safe and has family, has esteem, and has at night and sleep. That you need the whole picture. So that is very hard to manage. And the way I've learned to manage that is that I'm going to hire myself to make sure I manage those departments daily.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it sounds simple, but it's brilliant.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. And I think that just the irony, I mean, I smile thinking about all of us Americans. We've already, if you look at the pyramid, there's like 5 levels. We have 4 of them pretty much all taken care of. Especially,
automatic.
Yeah, automatic. And the esteem part is like all of Instagram and Facebook. That's our like fake world where we want to feel good about ourselves. And then we cannot get that next level. Meanwhile, you go to Guyana, a country of 1 million people in South America that's super poor, and they're probably happier, than us in some ways. Right? Because they don't even have to worry about self-actualization. They have to worry about the physiologic needs and maybe some safety needs, and that's that's their life. It simplifies. I mean, it's hard when, like you're saying, you almost need order and organization, and a strategy, or as Will Ferrell said, as George Bush, strategery, which I kept thinking when I was reading his stuff. You need a strategy for this because of all the things that are going on. So think about that. With surgery, it's always better to simplify it. A lot of times I don't, because I'm a creative type and I want to do all these cool things. But a simple surgery almost always has a better outcome than a more complicated surgery. In life, a simple life probably has a better outcome than a more complicated life. And we have this irony of being in a country that we have so many parts of this triangle, and everyone should listen to this, should look up Maslow's triangle, or if you can watch this on YouTube, Jason Martin, MD. We have so many parts of this triangle that makes our life more complicated, and it actually inhibits us from getting to self-actualization, which is the funny part of this whole thing. Self-actualization is a buzzword, but in reality, it's just saying, like, who are you? And in our clinic, we ask that sometimes in a way that's not invasive, but we're like, who do you want to be? Like, what are you thinking in your mind about yourself? And man, the answers you get on that are just out there and different. And some of them are really inspiring. Other ones are like, wow, this person just doesn't get it. So that kind of goes into what do you do on a daily basis? And you don't have to go through everything, but just kind of give us some tips for people that, on their daily, like you talk about the CEO of self, and then you talked about job duties. Like, what are those job duties for everyone listening that wants to maybe make the chaos a little bit less in their life?
Yeah, so I think the first thing you have to really do, and I can't reiterate this enough, is fire what you want to do. Fire your ego. Like, people think that, oh, if I make the decisions, I'm good for myself. It's no secret why monotheistic religions are so popular, because it's simple. One person, please tell me what to do and let me help me figure this thing out, right? It's very hard to try to run the show in your own head. Like, we all need some boss. Whether it doesn't matter. You can call that boss your CEO self. You can call it God. It doesn't matter what. You just need some ruler, because we will be wildly out of control if we try to let our knee-jerk limbic impulses run the show, right? So I found this because that was me. I did whatever. Like, I would see a donut, like, I want that, right? No thought at all. I just did it. Or if I saw something on Netflix, no, I'm staying up till 4:30 a.m. No thought, no thought at all. So I think the first step is kind of, as we kind of went through the pyramid, being and accepting that the pyramid, it's a theory, but gravity is a theory, right? It's a well-proven theory at this point that I think we should all kind of see that it is healthy for us. So, if you ever want to be happy or healthy or feel in a good state of mental homeostasis, at least, you should know that this is not a choice. Maslow is not making suggestions here, right? These are not suggestions. These are, bro, you need to do these, maintain these, and figure them out. What I like about Guyana is that when I go home, this is much easier to achieve, because when I'm in Guyana, having air conditioning is like literally self-actualization for many people. It's not very hard, but you still get the same, endorphin and kind of endorphin kicks daily. So it's the same brain chemistry that I would get here. It's just much more difficult here with the stuff, literally with the stuff. So I have found, for me, what gives me the biggest return on investment for each of those sort of Maslowian principles. So one of the things that I have a hard time with is just drinking enough water in the morning. It's literally that simple. I don't have an issue with sleeping. If your issue is sleeping, then maybe you need to come up with a system to ensure you get X amount of sleep hours a week, or maybe whatever your hole is, fill the hole, because you're generally good at fulfilling many of these things, or else you probably wouldn't be alive by now if you were bad at. Like, you generally are good at them. My biggest thing is, where are my biggest holes, and what gives me the biggest ROI when I do it. So for me, like, I'll just do one example for each. Physiological needs. I just feel terrible every day. I did it yesterday. I didn't drink enough water. For me, that magic number seems to be around 80 ounces of liquid. When I hit that number, it may take me an hour to get there, whatever long it takes me to get there. I just feel better. I feel like a car with gasoline. I just actually, at my base, my body is like, okay, you can go, you can run, checklist off the system. And then safety needs, obviously, however you need to feel safe and secure. So you need to lock your door at night. Do you need to, I don't know, if you have children, do you need to make sure that you set the camera or the baby monitor? It's not something, whatever makes you feel safe, check it. Do something on the checklist. The next one, I just make sure I call literally every morning. So every morning I talk to my girlfriend for, it's obnoxious. It's probably like an hour. Like it's a total waste of my time productive wise, but it fulfills something in me. It just makes me feel like I can do anything because I have that love. And the same thing, I talk to my mom. So maybe you're not talking to your mom enough. Maybe you're not talking to your spouse enough with these open conversations. And these are very simple. These are not hard things. I just feel old. Esteem needs. Come on, just log into Instagram. That's easy to fulfill. And the brain is weird in this way. Like once the brain gets full, sort of like Ayn Rand's rational self-interest philosophy. Once I am full, it's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm at homeostasis. You can go do whatever you want. That's when the thoughts come that's when unique thoughts come. That's when you say, hey, this is really interesting. I have no idea how this works. Maybe you start reading about architecture. Maybe you start having time you want to go get in the Degas, you go to a museum. This is where self-actualization comes. You can only free your brain to self-actualize when you fulfill these base needs. And to find what you're missing is totally and entirely up to you. If you can go to college and get an associate's degree, and if you can go to high school and finish that degree, you can figure out how to drink water. Like you can, like, come on, like this is not hard. So I think one, like I said, respecting the base, knowing that it's not a choice if you want your ultimate happiness. Two, really finding the holes and what gives you the biggest return on investment for each step. And I think the third thing would be continuing to maintain that base, and knowing that your brain won't it's locked. It's like a combination. You cannot even unlock your greatest potential or your highest thoughts until you take care of those bases. And it's almost astonishing. So as I explain these things that I do every day, it probably takes about, if I had to say a percentage of how much fulfilling this base takes of my day, probably at least 40%, right? And then the other 60% is wildly free. And this isn't like I do it all in one morning. Like I do it as it comes. I just do it we're always maintaining. It takes us an hour each day to shower, get ready, go to the bathroom, eat. Like we spend a lot of time in maintenance, more than we'd like to admit. And so all of that is included in there for me. And I think most people don't want that slave. They don't want to feel like they have to listen to something, or they want that freedom. But the real freedom is bargaining. That's what freedom is. Freedom is, okay, so I'm going to give you everything you need. I'm going to give you like 4 hours. Just give me the other 14 to do whatever the hell I want. Like that's freedom, is bargaining and in exchange, and giving to yourself. So it took me a while and some maturity to realize this, but you can't have the 24 hours to yourself. Just take care of this thing, this body, and it will, it'll give you free time and pay you back tenfold. It's almost, it's almost too much for me to even think emotionally, even conceive when I really put the big picture on it.
So what I'm hearing you say is, first and foremost, you got to get rid of, not throwing Chicago under the bus, your inner Kanye West. So you got to get rid of all those crazy ego thoughts inside, and those things you do that just like, I need to have this right now. And then you kind of go through that triangle, the Maslow's triangle. But more importantly, you can just look at it. It makes sense through your physiology, your safety, your esteem, and all these things. And you try to check off those boxes every day, which I think is really important. And the other thing you said, and you've said this before, is that just understand that just having total freedom in your life is not great. Like, total freedom can lead to chaos. And if you are a person, almost all people, and I would say all people, need some structure. So just realize that just going out and just feeling like you're free is not the absolute end necessity.
Right. And I think the opposite is true in our society. Is there's like the overglorification of being busy.
Yeah.
So you don't want to end up, like Ryan said, it maybe takes 40% of his day to meet these foundational needs. That's actually a lot of time, whereas so many people I feel like physically try to keep every spare second of their life busy, that they never actually give themselves a break to self-actualize or have any other thoughts.
Yeah, I don't. I do surgery a lot, and I tend to be a happy person, but there's times when I get beat down, and I know Ryan does too. He's talked about that in some of his videos.
Absolutely.
And that is this, whatever you call it, like mental hygiene, whatever that thing is, you have to check off those boxes. Ryan, do you actually physically have a chart that you check off?
Yeah, it's insane. The best part about it is it's literally it's in the back of all my videos. It's just there in plain sight. No one even knows
his chart?
what it is.
Well, this one isn't, but he has it in his videos. It's that whiteboard.
Okay.
It's in my video.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, this one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have your presentation here. So again, this is on our YouTube channel, Jason Martin MD.
Yep.
It's there, and I'm actually looking at it now, and it's
With all the
over
letters.
the top.
Yep. See, all these things mean something. Hydrate, socialize, walk, bike.
It's all shorthand. So I went to probably maybe how long? What years is it? 5 years ago. I spent probably half a year in Europe, and one of the things I did was I just got obsessed into this like Medici, Galileo phase. And one thing that intrigued me about Galileo is that he was this master of shorthand. So he would write these notes to himself that they were so deep, and Nikola Tesla did a lot of this. They just wrote these manic notes to themselves that no one could even translate, and they'd be like, that's not even a real letter. What is that symbol he just made up? And so I picked up on that, and I have to credit a lot of what those kind of genius manic minds did to help me. So I think one thing I did was the board. It's just a calendar. It's nothing special, and I write literally one thing for each category. So on the board, it's in the upper right, and it's HWB, PTL, FC, ST. And I have that so when people come over, they're like, dude, they don't even know. It's shorthand enough that they don't even notice. But I'll kind of say what it stands for. So the H just stands for hydrate. Every day I need an H on this board, right? And every day I should have that 80 ounces mark. I should have that done. It's thing. So in the little corner of my board, I have that little H. WB is walk bike. Would basically go for a walk or ride my bike. It's not that complex. People just need exercise, right? And sometimes just the walk is good enough. So even get there early, and then you ever notice sometimes you'll go for lunch and you'll be like, all right, let's walk down to the something. 5 minutes of walking, you just feel better. Mm-hmm. And it's literally have you walked today, human? Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's that. So that to me is another one of those base triggers, is that I will feel better if I hydrate, if I walk, ride my bike. The next one is PT. So you can do yoga, or I stretch. Sometimes I'll just get up and I'll just stretch. Can you stretch for 30 seconds? Have your body feel limber, loose. I have the L. L means something for my life. I could pay my homeowners association bill. Done. I did something so that work doesn't own me, right? I have some work-life balance. So I have to do one thing with an L every day, even if it's take out the trash. Just something for your personal life, because you both know how you can get with work, especially if you're good at it. It's almost like it's all you want to do. And you almost doing your laundry comes beneath you, right? Because you're good at your job, and it's you don't want to do these life things. But I don't know. I feel whole when I do something for my life. S is Fortis, my work. So yeah, that's easy. That's on the board every day. C is clients. I do client work every day. S is socialize, like I talked about. and he is trained. So these letters from self-actualization down, they help me fulfill that faith. So all in all, I may spend, like I said, like a large percentage of my day doing these. But one of my favorite quotes from Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, he said that I don't think there's such thing as balance. One thing I found in life is really trying to find integration, and the key to life is integrating all the small parts of your life together seamlessly. So I wouldn't try to go do a yoga class in the morning if it didn't integrate with what my life currently does. So what I have is I have a little station with bands and, you know, a few rollout things and a few balls, and I go from my computer where I work. It takes me 5 seconds to walk over there, stretch for 5 minutes while I drink some, like, done, right? I'm not going to drive an hour to a hot yoga if it doesn't integrate properly. So to fulfill these needs, don't set it so high. It's like, well, I need to walk. I need to go to the range to walk. Dude, you're like, come on, like, you're never going to integrate that in your busy life. That's just never going to happen. The happiness is so close to home, right? It could be just FaceTime and say, hey, Ma, thinking about you, love you. Done. That took like 10 seconds. Come on, dude, just take the leap of faith and do it. So every day I see these as investments and not things I have to do, because I think once you kind of tell yourself, I have to walk, I have to do, the feeling of becoming a tyrant of self sets in, and no one likes to be a slave to themselves. And so the whole CEO thing is basically me saying as a manager is like, look, these are daily investments we're making into your self-actualization. It's yin yang. There's a balance, right? I just can't go out and self-actualize and have this great brain if I don't have this base entirely and totally taken care of. You know, so some days I'll do longer on the weekend. I'll invest longer into myself if I have a longer Saturday, or sometimes I'll babysit my brother's kids, right? That totally counts as investment. You know, it's doubling up. It's integrating. It's doing both. And I don't think it's that hard to find, but once you find it, it lasts forever, because you really don't change, right? These things that make you tick, that make you click, that fulfill that faith, that will always be there. You know, people for the most part don't change. Or superficial, you know, habits and interests change, but who you are at the root, that thing that'll satisfy that base, it's going to be the same. So the more you do it, the more efficient you get at it, and you will be clear to think and to be inspired. And yeah, I'm not always the best at it. I don't do it every day, let me tell you. So that's why I have a visual of how well I'm doing. So more often than not, I'd probably say I hit it really, really, like I do all that, probably 2 out of 7 days a week. Most of them are partial. You know, it's hard to do them all, but I know what's best for me, and I just strive to get as good as I can. It's not always perfect. Some days I have to get up, get on the computer at 5:30, and I don't get off till 5. Some days you have to do that, and that's understandable. But as long as you know how to reinvest and kind of yourself up, and get back into that balance, I think that's what's important. At least knowing how to get back.
So if, like, you know, you think about a good life, it's about values, and the values you hold dearest, right? And fulfilling all these check marks allows you to take the extra, like you're saying, 60% to really get into that self-actualization mode, to that part where you can better your life and and that feeds back to you. It makes you feel more confident, improves your self-perception. It frees you up to do the things that are going to make you feel great, right?
Yes.
And one does not occur without the other. That's really what you're saying, and I think that's really important. And this is what for me really kind of hit home with me, right? Mm-hmm. Is that I'm a high-functioning person. I tend to swing for the fences. But you can lose track of these other things. And I love the fact that you have shorthand and you're bringing up Tesla. And I mean, it's hilarious how your mind works. But I do think that if people could check out your videos or even watch this one, but whatever, you could see this whiteboard. It's pretty simple. It's a square and it has letters on it.
With duct tape.
With duct tape. Yeah, with duct tape. Yeah. So, I think that that's really smart. So, think about your life, or people listening to this that want to get better or feel better or have a more valuable life, a more happy life. Think about your life pragmatically and break it down into its little subsets and try to make sure you take care of every part of that a day. Now, what would you say? Because you don't have kids, do you, man? You don't have kids, and you're not. I mean, so your life.
I'm closing in on it, though.
Okay.
My
All
time
right.
is almost up.
All right. Well, don't rush. Don't rush. So, you know, a lot of people that come into our office and listen to this podcast, they all have kids and families, and you know how life gets, especially middle-aged. So, you know, I think that these things, I mean, Amy, you can answer this. Don't you think that these things are all doable even for someone with a busy schedule?
Oh, absolutely. And that was kind of my point earlier. Like, when we all really take a step back and look at our lives, like, yes, you can fill every single second of your day with something that keeps you busy,
right,
quote unquote busy, but it maybe isn't even fulfilling one of your needs or even something that needs to be done. You know, so I think that there are basic foundational things that everyone could add into their daily habits, myself included, that would actually make their life better and more open and have more time.
Right. I think that once you start doing these smaller things and you get into, I don't want to say repetition because I love repetition because I'm obsessive compulsive, but like if you get into these habits, strategery, and then what happens is the things that are harder, like for people like nutrition, like fitness for the average person, those tend to fall in line more because you're already in the mindset of kind of checking off the box and going at it a little bit more pragmatically. Do you agree with that?
I think for certain type of people, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I don't.
Yeah, A-type people, I would agree. They're
yes.
they're very good at filling the box. But I think that's the ironic part is that it takes some creativity, no matter the type of person you are, to find these things about yourself, right? Yeah. And that creativity starts with simply looking within, being honest, what is it? And then two, just finding the most efficient solution, right? You don't need to go sign up for some retreat. Like, I mean, if you want to, sure, but generally it's close to home. Like, if even like you said, with people who have children, you know what? Maybe just, I'm not saying, but you could slow down a bit because a lot of these things can be fulfilled within you. Like, your child is still a human, right? So if you and your child eat breakfast together, you're both knocking off stuff off the list. Like, your child unbeknownst to them, you know, they may not know it, but this kid is still a human being, you know. Like, at the end of the day, like, a lot of these things are similar. You know, the fact that I can talk about these things to two people that I never had an extended dialogue about and we're in total agreement just shows how much more we have in common. Simply, if you're born a Homo sapien than not. It's almost astonishing how well you know a person just by me being a human myself. So, I think finding that integration from that, like Jim Collins says, is everything to make it efficient and seamless as possible.
So once you kind of get through that, and you're your own CEO, and you've created this foundation. And then you're trying to work your way to self-actualization. One of the things you talked about, and this is kind of veering off a little bit, but it interested me. I want to ask you about it. It's more about the state of flow. I think that I don't know if that applies to everyone, but I think it's something in us as human beings that is really interesting. So the guy who came up with this was Hungarian. He grew up like right after World War II, and like basically in Eastern Europe. You know, all the atrocities that happened, he just saw a lot of sadness surrounding him as a young man, and he was searching for answers, right? Just like we all do. And he kind of stumbled upon this idea of state of flow by looking at happiness in different societies. And one of the things he did, and you've alluded to this before, is that just only a certain percentage above basically poverty of financial gain or whatever your financial success is, happiness does not increase past that point. So you need to fulfill everything on a basic level, and then above that, happiness does not correlate with how much money you have. But then he got into this state of flow, description of state of flow, which his last name is Csikszentmihalyi, and the spelling of this is the most god-awful spelling. It's
he has his last name and his first name. I think that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like, that's what, like, yeah.
Oh, it's switched around?
No, see, look.
Yeah, it's just added on. They just kind of.
Oh, I guess. Yeah. So Mihai and then the Mihai, I got you. Yeah. So state of flow, I mean, you can describe that for people, but like, and then maybe just hit on the fact, I mean, how does a normal person get into a state of flow? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So I first learned about this. So I think we all know the feeling of flow, right? It's just when just like most things in life, right? Like we know we may not know what the formula for gravity is, but we know how to walk, right? We feel it. And that's, I think, the good thing about being human is that all of the code is written within you. So like everyone knows what flow is. Flow is when you're just, it's that second wind when you're jogging. It's this conversation, right? We're just going, right? We're just kind of lost. Time is lost. We don't know what's going on. You're engaged. You're in something. So whatever that thing is, if you cook and you get lost when you cook, or if you find that when you're with your preschoolers, you just get lost and you could do it for hours, that is generally what your state of flow is. That place where you're doing your thing, as some people call it. So the way that he explained this, which I really like about it, is that one, he put it in an objective psychological way to understand it. So he basically just used like a kind of a simple X and Y axis, with the X axis being essentially like your ability to do things, Y axis being like the challenge of it. So if you have something that's really a really low challenge, so I'm looking out the window. So let's say I wanted to see if I could cross the street and hit the crosswalk button 100 times. I would probably become depressed after a while, right? This is akin to many factory jobs, because it's not very difficult. There's a very low challenge in doing it, and I'm not really expressing my highest ability or talents, right? So that would kind of land me as sad. What would be the opposite would be if I had no crossing signal and I had to run across Pacific Coast, or like something like Pacific Coast Highway out here in LA, right? Or run across the 5. Like that would give me anxiety, because it's very difficult, very high challenge, and I've never practiced it. Like I don't have the talent to do it. So that would give me anxiety. So this is where a lot of people I think, don't find flow, is that one, when you first start something, always, it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect. Your ego will always say, "You can do that. You're good. Do that." Even if it was like start a podcast, your ego will get you in the game. I will say that, to have some healthy narcissism. Like, come on, you have to be ridiculous to be like, "Yeah, I want to be a surgeon." That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's totally ridiculous. That is kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I agree.
But that's kind of the thing about healthy narcissism, is that your narcissism gets you in the game. You quickly see that, whoa, this was a mistake. Like this, I have anxiety. This is hard. But through time, your ability increases, right? And the better you get at it, the more it becomes less of an anxiety activity and more of a flow activity. So maybe your first, let's do something else. The first time you ever run a marathon, you're going to have anxiety. I'm good at it, and it's very difficult. It will always be difficult. Surgery will always be difficult. Running a podcast, setting up, being the producer, engineer, whatever, it will always be difficult. But there is something glorious about desired difficulty, is that if you know that I'm being challenged close to my max capacity and I am good at it, that's how you make Michael Jordan, LeBron James. Like that's when we see that art manifested in what we see as somebody making it look quote unquote effortless. So that's what I think flow state is. So to find that, I think find something that just appeals to you, but is hard. And most people never get past the stage of it being hard because they're like, I'm not good at this, right? And so you never get past that initial stage of an anxiety. But if you give it time, it will become an activity that is a flow activity. So more or less, we all know what these are, right? Everyone has a flow activity that they know. So dancing could be a flow activity. It doesn't know, it could be anything. But to self-actualize, flow is necessary. You have to have an activity where it is very difficult, and then you become very competent at it, and you become very skilled at it. And so I think that's kind of the intertwining of this talk, is that to become competent at something, you also have to have a healthy base, as Maslow said, for years, right? I can't become a competent speaker if I'm sick during half the time I'm learning, right? I have to be healthy. I have to feel good. I have to be getting rest and things like that. So they're all very intertwined. In I think if there's any podcast and any takeaway I want in this podcast is that I want to spend my life, in my opinion, heaven on earth is flow state. It's the best drug, right? There's no high or low or food or gambling. There's no quote unquote 7 deadly sin that is better than flow. Like the greatest feeling, in my opinion, it's in the divine feeling is the flow state. It's the greatest way to spend your time on earth, and those who can spend more time in flow will be happier, and you'll say things like, oh, the day went by, I didn't even notice. I've been sitting here reading or studying or working on this for 16 hours, and I just didn't bother me any. I just felt great. So
yeah, he talked about it, the flow state just being a sense of a person focused on one task and everything just melts away. And he referred to like musicians and scientists, and he referenced kind of basically Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, is that you have to do something so repetitiously it becomes almost innate to you, and then it just flows out. This part of our bodies, our brains that flows out.
Well, but it still has to keep you interested and stimulated, and that's where, like surgery, like you very often say that you feel you're most relaxed and you're most
all the time
where you're supposed to be in the OR, but it doesn't mean that it's not without challenges.
Right.
And that's why it keeps it interesting.
Right, because I was laughing when Ryan said that about you have to be crazy to be a surgeon, and sometimes you feel like you're a sociopath, right?
Yeah.
Like because you're going in there,
like this is
you're like
crazy.
taking a knife to people's bodies, and you're relaxed. That's not a normal thing, but starting out, you start to question that as a surgeon, but then you realize it is more like a flow state because you're in there and you're so focused and you're so enthralled with what you're doing that you feel good. You feel the best you can as a human being, almost like being with people you love, and it has that feeling to it. So, and a flow state doesn't have to be about a technique or an ability. It can be about being with friends, listening to music, like Ryan said, reading a book. And that's the thing I think people miss in the Western world, They don't have those flow state scenarios. They're so chaotic. Their lives are chaotic. They're always checking their phones every 10 minutes, et cetera, et cetera.
Every 10 minutes. Let's try every 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
When was the last time you put your phone down for 10 minutes?
But I do think it's really important, and kind of bring about what Ryan was talking about, is that you have to check off that foundation to get into situations where you can do the flow state. If I wanted to be, so I'm a good surgeon. If I want to be a successful surgeon, I have to work out. I realize that, right? I have to wake up in the morning and I have to eat a good meal to be ready for surgery. I have to be mentally ready. And that means I have to somehow process the things that are causing me stress in life, right? I have to stretch, literally, I have to stretch to be flexible in surgery and stuff like that. And that's the same is true for everyone. It doesn't matter what your job is. Just because I'm a surgeon doesn't mean, that applies to everyone. You have to do all the things to get yourself into that flow state. And I think that's really, really important.
It is. And taking care of the foundation, right after I heard your presentation, Ryan, I immediately went out into the lobby and called Dr. Martin and told him that I had just heard the most amazing presentation ever, because he and I often talk about these kinds of things, like, that people get so caught up in these stupid things. Like if every day you have no idea what you're eating for lunch, every day you're going to be stressed out about you don't know what you're eating for lunch, where you could just prepare that in advance the night before.
Well, I should also add that I came up with this all through personal experience, right? I wasn't proactively looking to read any of this. So one thing that I did say in the presentation that I didn't say today is that I initially thought after I finished grad school that I wanted to be in the corporate world, basically start my own. I started a supplement company while I was in graduate school, and it's like I said, the ego gets you in the door, right? My ego was like, "Do it, you can do this, you can do," and it's good, and it's right. I can do it. So I went through all of these things, and I achieved. I achieved these things, but it was at the expense of everything. You name it, sleep, health, anything, right? Relationships. It was at the expense of all of that. So it was only in hindsight that I found these things. So I'm not some person who it's just kind of speaking from a book. It's that I did it, and I, for lack of a better word, I fucked up. I was just really my fattest, my most depressed, my overweight, and I had to get it together, right? I didn't go to see psychotherapy or didn't self-loathe. I just said, there's got to be something that I'm missing here because I keep doing this. I did this before graduation. I did this with work. I did this with, like, I go too far. And so I get up and stretch and get up and have a good meal. And the best word I can come up for is wants to say, go do this, go blah, 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 something. So I recently competed. I recently competed in like this bodybuilding shows, and it takes a lot of time from work. I was talking to my girlfriend, and I told her, because of that, I've made just less money this month. And I mean, she thought I was ridiculous. I was like, I'm going to make $10,000 this weekend. I literally, and this is why I've been so bad at getting back to you. I'm not joking. I made $10,000 this weekend. Like, I had to figure out how to, like, I couldn't be behind on my bills. I was like, I have to figure this out. Like, I gotta figure this out, right? And so that, I mean, and I did it. But then again, it was at the expense of being behind on getting back to you. It was at the expense of I haven't talked to my family much. Like, that's how I operated all the time. So I know how to go into, which many Americans do, go into hyper, make that money, grind, hustle mode. We are all very good at that. But can you do that and manage a happy life? Can you do that and feel good about yourself? So I think that was my thing. I figured out the hustle and bustle, make the money stuff. I figured that out, but there's got to be a better way to do this. And so for me, all this Maslow stuff and all this stuff is the seasoning on the food. Like, if we all got it. We all know how to do this, but this is what brings life to it. Like, this is what makes it worth it. Like, that little bit of balance and the little bit of investment that you make into your hard work, so it's all not for nothing. This is, to me, what has really made me a really happy person, to be honest with you. So,
yeah, that's super awesome. And I think that that's something that anyone listening to this could take so much away from that.
So to kind of tie this all up, you have a maintenance of commandments, and you have 1 through 13, which I think are hilarious. And I'm going to read them. So number 1 is you get to. Number 2 is fight resistance. Number 3 is be the operator. Number 4 is no fear, no guilt, be free. 5 is take little wins. 6 is no human being has what I can't. Number 7 is try harder. If you don't like it, just try harder. Number 8, which is my favorite is my shit is good enough. My shit is only good if I make it good, which I think is
you
so
don't
true.
say it like he says it.
I know. I know. I'm just for people on there. Number 9 is ride the wave, get the power to submit to the power. 10 is the people and not the celebs. 11 is integration over domination. 12 is forward, always move forward. And 13 is chill. It's almost over. Yeah, I think that you take so many things from philosophy, so many things from people that are into empowerment, so many things for people that are, kind of trying to push for self-actualization, and you distill it down into its basic levels, and you allow people to apply it to their lives, which you can see why this would work so well in fitness and bodybuilding, and powerlifting, and all the stuff that you are a coach in. So it's just truly inspiring, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I know this is kind of esoteric, coming on basically the plastic surgery podcast. So we always ask everyone that comes on. So, and be honest, it's not gonna hurt our feelings. What do you think about plastic surgery?
So this is actually an interesting question to ask me because I've never thought about it. So this is a live response. I think it's okay. So sometimes I like things simply because I can't believe that it's existentially even an option, right? So it's like me personally. I can sit here and say like, oh no, I don't like plastic surgery and anything like that. Let me be clear. I was born I didn't have any cleft palate issues. I'm handsome. Like, I build muscle fairly. Like, I can say that out of my luck, right? So it's like I never looked at myself and had any issues, and I didn't want to change anything. So one, I have to stay that biased, like personally. Two, I think it's amazing that it's even a thing, right? So I have that perspective above all. Like if you were literally, if out of the 150,000 years we've been here, like if you just came here like 120 years ago, you'd be like, plastic what? Like you would have no idea what we're talking about. So I think I'm just so American, and so like the fact that I live in an age where if you want to do that and that's an option, rock with it, do it fully. Me personally, if there's ever a time where I need reconstructive surgery, I'll go with it. But I think for enhancement of anything, I'll just work my hardest, and if that's my cap, then I'll live in contention with it. Because for me, and there's one thing I have in this presentation is, if you don't know how much, the answer is always more. And I think that you have to be content somewhere in life to be happy. Contention for me is a big part of it. So, I don't know. If I don't like how something looks, I'll figure out how to be content with it, because I need my happiness above all. I can't be worried about trying to fix things or change. But I think it's amazing. Personally, I don't know. Kind of good looking. I don't need it.
I think honestly, I love your answer. I mean, that's kind of the way we approach plastic surgery anyways. We tell people, do everything you can on your own. So, I think that's a healthy way to look at it. I think it's, and like, I'm just like you, man. I was a fine arts major, and I was like, I don't think I want to do this. And then somehow I ended up in medical school, and then I found plastic surgery, and here you go. I do surgical arts. So, but it's really interesting. I will tell you this: I would love to be someone who could get as ripped as Ryan. I'd let him be a plastic surgery for.
It's funny. How many times have I said this in podcasts? It's all luck. Whether it's IQ, it's where you're born, how much muscle you can put on, how hard you can. It's all luck, all of it.
It is, but you have to actually do something with all that luck you've been given. So,
but you also have to have a high enough IQ to know how to do something.
That's true.
Like that's the other part, right? Like it's all luck.
Yeah,
it's all luck.
It totally is. It really is. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on today. And for anybody looking to find out more about Ryan, definitely follow him on Instagram. He's the Natty Pro. That's the NATTY Pro. He also has a website, Fortis EQ. It's FORTISEQ.com. So you can find out more about him as a powerlifter and him as a person, and watch him on YouTube also.
And you can learn all about philosophy and psychology. I mean, you don't even have to go to anything related to medical school. Brian pretty much has all that stuff taken care of for you when you watch his videos. So,
That's true.
But Ryan, it's been awesome, man. You're truly inspiring. And I think that people should check out your information. We know that you coach like more, power lifters and bodybuilders, but they could at least go on and look at your information. Is there a website that you would refer them to?
The one I already said.
Specifically.
Yeah, I would say either one, Fortis, my Fortis website, FortisEQ.com, mainly because I find that I don't get, and I'm kind of fortunate for this, I don't get many general questions. Like, people generally have some complex questions for me. So I'm lucky in the fact that I engage with, I guess the thinkers of society. And two, I would say see my YouTube or my Instagram. Mm-hmm. I write every day. My Instagram gets kind of the less complex thoughts. And YouTube, I get the sort of more complex dumps. So, like, I have probably, 50 videos I've written for the past 6 months, and I'm just, ready to re-record again. So that's kind of how I do it. It's like I live life, reflect, and then I go put it on YouTube. And that's been, my dynamic for, the past 10 years with YouTube is take a break, come back, take a break, come back. So most of what I have to say, I say and I move on. It gives me kind of cathartic freedom. So go on my YouTube, check it out, my Instagram. I try not to waste people's time in fitness. I try to leave them with something, at least if it meant something to me. So yeah, my social media is my biggest avenue of information, and I'm grateful. I have tens of thousands of people who it blows my mind, who are interested in it. So
Oh, that's super awesome. So thank everyone so much for listening today. You can also find us on Instagram at Beauty and the Surgeon Podcast and on YouTube at Jason Martin MD, and follow us online at jasonmartinmd.com.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. This was awesome.
Oh, man, it was great. I had a great time. Thank you.